everyone. Welcome to our Women Who Changed Westford podcast, where we will be interviewing women who have served on the Select Board over the course of Westford's history. We are capstone students from Westford Academy, working with the Westford Museum and Historical Society to put together this program in collaboration with the Westford Cat. Today, we will be chatting with Elizabeth Almeida. She served 3 years on the Select Board. Thank you for joining us today, Mrs. Almeida.
Thank you for having me here. This is a wonderful project you're working on.
Thank you. And our first question is, what first brought you to Westford?
Sure. We moved to Westford in 2011. At that time, I was interested in starting a business and knew I wanted it to be something around food and open space, agriculture. And we had friends here who had some land available. Folks are familiar with the Meadowbrook Farm over on Route 40. And so we knew Bob Webb and then got to know Bob Waskevich, two leaders, pillars in our community in terms of land conservation, and they've done a tremendous amount for agriculture here. So that opportunity first brought us to Westford, and honestly, I had no idea what a wonderful community it is, and I've been so happy and grateful that we did land here to raise our children in this wonderful town.
What first got you interested in politics and serving the town?
Sure. So my entry into politics here in Westford was through the Agricultural Commission. So early on when we lived in Westford, I was farming at the Meadowbrook Farm, and the Agriculture Commission hadn't met in several years, so there was an effort to revitalize that commission. So I recruited some friends. We joined the commission. That very first year that the commission was running, the town manager, Jody Ross, invited us to present at the town strategic planning retreat, which is an event held every year, usually at Kimball's, and the community discusses various projects and opportunities. So we presented, and we had a list of maybe 20 potential projects for the Agricultural Commission, and we asked the community to vote on them. And a community garden came out as the number one project that the community wanted us to work on. So we pursued that, and in I think it was 2014, opened the community garden, and then 2 years later expanded it. And that was my initiation into town politics and seeing the power of what the community can accomplish when we come together.
What makes you so passionate about agricultural in the first place?
So I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, and come from a community and family of people who believe that growing food and feeding people is really essential work in our community and in our society. So that was my upbringing. And then I would say my part of my religious or faith formation has to do with serving people. And I think most people can agree that hunger relief is a moral issue. And so I see my work today as combining having an impact on the local food system and hopefully helping move our food system to a more sustainable place, while also partnering with organizations that work in the area of hunger relief. And I really like being able to work at that intersection between growing food in the food system and knowing that we're contributing to hunger relief as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mushroom farming business, and why did you choose to farm mushrooms specifically?
Sure. So I grow mushrooms indoors, and we grow year-round, so 365 days of the year. I have someone harvesting mushrooms. We primarily sell to high-end restaurants and independent retailers and farm stands. I love working with local farms that run CSAs and selling to that community. And I started growing mushrooms because prior to this I was doing outdoor farming, and the cost of land is really prohibitive in New England for farming. And so I was looking for something that I could do in the woods around our house, and something that didn't require so much land, but I could still be an entrepreneur in the food system. And at that time, about 10 years ago, I found there was a gap in our food system in terms of locally grown mushrooms. So I pretty much taught myself on Google and YouTube how to do this, and have grown the business through networking and working with our local chefs, and have been able to develop a little niche here. And it's a fun, interesting business.
How did you bring your agricultural perspective to the Select Board, and how did that influence your views on important topics?
Sure. So I think when you come from the field of agriculture, you really value open space. And I think that's something I have appreciated about Westford, is our commitment to preserving land, both for agriculture and open space in general for environmental reasons. So I was always willing to support those projects. I was also considered the expert when we were discussing the property on Boston Road, which has been a contentious issue in town for going on 10 years now, I believe. And just understanding the nuances to agriculture and what that would mean for the community and the APR that's on the land, that's protecting that land so it isn't developed into a commercial property. So I really, brought that little bit of expertise to the select board as well.
How did you balance your business with being on the select board?
So the honest answer to that was it was tough. And I think one of your later questions is whether or not there's a reason I didn't run for another term, and those are closely related because depending on how you serve on the select board, you can give a lot of time. And I spent a lot of time on select board business while I was serving, and it reached a point that I knew I needed to spend more of my time growing my business at this stage of my life. And so that was one of the reasons why I didn't run again, because it was getting challenging to balance both.
You said you sold to high-end restaurants, your
Yes.
mushrooms. What restaurants? Can you tell us? Or,
Sure.
okay.
Like one of my favorite examples right now is Forge and Vine in Groton. So we just hosted a mushroom tapas fundraiser that benefited the Boston area gleaners. So we were able to bring together my quality mushrooms, the really exquisite cooking by the chefs over there, Sam and Chantel, and then we did it as a benefit for the Boston area gleaners who glean nearly 2 million pounds of food from local farms, meaning they go out and harvest food that would otherwise rot in the ground or on the trees, and they get that food into the hunger relief system. So I really wanted to bring awareness to their good work. And so for me, it was the perfect evening to combine all that. Right here in Westford, people enjoy my mushrooms at Aviva Trattoria. That's, they've been a loyal customer since day one. The chef that was there at the time that I started growing mushrooms has been very loyal all the way through my business. So that's another place where local folks can enjoy the mushrooms.
That's great.
What was it like being in the town government during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure. So I was chair of the select board at the beginning of the pandemic. I would give all the credit in the world to our town manager at the time, Jody Ross, who was really the one navigating, on the ground with the hundreds of individuals that work for the town and having to make the decisions and bring recommendations to the select board of how we would work to keep the town operating, but also keep our employees safe. And so it was, there was just a lot of uncertainty. And so always trying to figure out how do we best adhere to federal advice on how we should be structuring the workplace, what services we should continue to provide to the community. There were times that I would push back on some of the departments. And for example, there was a big impulse to close everything, right? And shut everything down. And so early on, there was some folks who wanted to close the parks. And if you recall, the pandemic started in March. And I thought, why do we need to close the beaches in March? We're not going to have, it's not going to be South Beach. We're not going to have, pictures like they were, if you saw pictures of Miami at the time, their beaches were so crowded. And my feeling was, everyone's struggling. Give people the peace and mental health of some time outside. We don't need to shut, to put up signs closing our beaches in March. Similarly, at the beginning, we were told that we couldn't open the community garden because we couldn't have people congregating. Well, in the community garden, everybody is assigned a plot 15 by 15. So we had plenty of social distancing and we were in the outdoors. And again, I felt like, there was issues of food security during the pandemic. And so let people grow their own food if we can. And, the gardeners were able to maintain their distance from each other. And just for mental health as well, let people get outside and enjoy the parts of life that we can still enjoy. So those were some of the tensions we dealt with, but overall, our town manager I would give her the credit for having to make a lot of the day-to-day decisions about how each department would be able to continue to function.
Do you have any specific moments or things that you accomplished on the select board that you're most proud of?
I think my legacy on the select board that I still hear about most often is around communication. And I really wanted more residents to understand the town issues And one of the very first things I did while I was on the select board was to sit down with Dan O'Donnell, the town's finance director, and he and I did a Town Finance 101 night that's still on YouTube. Westford Cat recorded it. People still mention it on Facebook in discussions several times a year when people have questions about town finances and trying to understand the town budget and the budgeting process. Somebody will always say, watch Elizabeth Almeida's video with Dan from now 2017. But I really wanted more folks to understand, what's included debt, what's excluded debt, how does the town budget work, what is the tax levy. And what I find is that the longer you're serving in government, is the more jargon you use. And the harder it is for people who are new to this conversation to understand what you're talking about. So I took that opportunity where at the time I was very new and I didn't understand all of it. I decided to use that, sort of my own lack of understanding or lack of knowledge as an opportunity to help educate the wider community. And folks really appreciated that. And there were so many times during my service on the select board where I realized the best thing I could do was to say, hey, can we slow down and explain what does that mean, so that anybody watching the meeting could catch up on the jargon we were using. And towards the end of my term, we implemented the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, which is now a bill that gets sent to all homeowners based on their impervious surface. And it was not, still is not a popular program because nobody wants to have to pay more money. But what I did was came in here to Westford Cat, and I had worked with town staff to make a script that was explaining the issues and providing all the facts. And Westford Cat helped with the visuals and the graphics so that we could put together a 10-minute explanation of what is the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. And I heard from so many residents, I still don't like paying the bill, but I understand it. So thank you for explaining it in a way that I could understand it. And to me, that's the best we can do. Like, nobody ever wants to pay another dollar in taxes or bills. But if we can do our best to explain it, then I think we can get more community consensus around certain issues if we can communicate well.
How did you campaign for your election? Can you tell us a little bit more about that process?
Sure. So I was fairly young compared to the average age of select board members, you could say. So a couple things I did. One, whenever I held a fundraiser or any kind of event, they were always family oriented. So often when you run for select board or some office, you have to have a campaign fundraiser. And we have a couple of restaurants in town that typically hold those, and they're hors d'oeuvres, and people stand around and drink wine and eat little foods. And my campaign kickoff was an ice cream party. So people could bring their kids. We had coloring out. The kids colored big signs for me. And really, that was my stage in life. My kids were 5 and 7 when I ran for office. So most of the people I knew also had kids that age, and they were not going to come out on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. They were not going to hire a babysitter so they could come to a campaign kickoff for me. But they would come by on a Saturday afternoon and enjoy some free ice cream and hear about politics. So I was really pleased with how many new folks I was able to bring into the process. Folks who had never attended a campaign event, some people who had never contributed to a campaign before. I was able to invite them into the process and realize that they could have an impact. So that was one thing I did. And then, I would have like meet and greets at the playground, like meet people where they are. That's what you've got to do. So I was able to reach different voters, I think, because of how I was campaigning.
Would you say that Westford's farming needs to have more representation in town government?
Oh, always, of course. Okay. And I say that because food is foundational to our society, right? Without enough food, society devolves really quickly if people are hungry. And so I think the more we can do to ensure food security and to help people connect with their food, the better. So, and there are really creative ways. I'm growing thousands of pounds of food a year in an old indoor mill building. So I think there are a lot of, we may think we don't have much agricultural land in this town, and it's true, we don't have nearly what we used to have, but there are other ways that our community can support the food system and distribution and food processing, storage. There are a lot of opportunities. So I think there's always room for more representation and more conversation about food security and production agriculture within our town government.
You've contributed so much to the town. You were also named the 2020 Commonwealth Heroine by the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. So as I was reading about you, I was like, wow, I feel like you're a great inspiration for young women. So do you have any advice for young women who want to pursue politics or local government?
Do it. Do it. There's no reason to hesitate, no reason to think that you are not qualified or that you need, sometimes people are like, I need more experience, I need more of this, or they have doubts about it. This is something, so right now I'm working with a group that is specifically focused here in Westford to get more women engaged in town government, volunteering on the committees within town, and then eventually deciding to run. We recently supported a few candidates in the election that was held earlier this week, and all the candidates that we supported did get elected to their offices here in town. I think sometimes women are harder on themselves than maybe everybody looking at them. And I have folks that'll tell me their bio and all the things they've done, and then they say, "Do you think I'm qualified to run?" And I'm like, "Of course." Just get down to town hall and pull your papers and run, because we need all the voices in politics. And even if you run and you don't win a seat, you have still served the town. We just had a contested election for select board. We had 4 candidates, and a contested election is so healthy for our democracy, because an uncontested election means people don't have to do much work to get elected. When it's contested, then people's ideas are challenged, there are more conversations, people are asked to explain themselves more, and all of that makes for a robust conversation in our community. And I think that's what helps our democracy thrive. And so, for women that may have some doubt about whether or not they're qualified to run, I would just say, just do it. And here in Westford, myself and a number of other women are always happy to support any candidate, men or women, that are thinking about running, and to sit down and explain the process and talk through the current issues and help people decide if running for office is a good decision for them.
That last question was kind of like on the scope of you being an inspiration to other young women. Do you have any inspirations yourself, any mentors that you've looked up to?
Here in the community of Westford, we have some incredible women that have gone before and served before, I got involved. And just most recently, Andrea Perriner-Sweet retired from the select board after I think it was 15 or 18 years. And she has been incredible. Her vision on some of the big projects in town, such as the Stony Brook School and athletic fields and housing development there. She was one of the leaders on that project. And she has always led with so much intelligence and compassion. And so she's been a leader that I have been able to go to and ask for advice. Others, such as Emily Teller, she has been involved here in town for decades, and also knows everybody, knows the issues, has some very strong, passionate opinions about things. And I joke that if you're in elected office, whenever you need something, you just call Emily, and she will invite you over for a bowl of ice cream and help you talk through whatever's going on. I know a lot of us also look up to Ellen Hardy. She was the first woman that ran for Select Board and served on the Westford Select Board. And so I always admire the guts that it took her, to have the courage to do that. And she was much younger than I was when I ran. And her stories from her service here in Westford are always inspiring. So we're fortunate here in the community to have a number of women who have given very generously, and they're very intelligent, capable women that continue to mentor up-and-coming leaders.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of music?
Right now, my favorite music is anything my kids are playing. Honestly, they're both musicians, and when they practice, I think that's might be what I'm going to miss most when they grow up and move out, is the sound of piano or trumpet or whatever instrument they happen to be trying out that day.
How old are your kids?
They're teenagers, so 14 and
Okay.
16.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you would like to add?
I think the other way I'm supporting the community right now that I'm really excited about and always want to talk about is the Flowers to Empower group. We have middle school and high school girls who are growing cut flowers down on the same parcel of land as the community garden. And the idea of Flowers to Empower is to teach entrepreneurship and leadership and philanthropy. So these girls are growing cut flowers, They are selling them in the community, and then with the proceeds, they have to first pay for their business expenses, but then they use some of the money to go on outdoor adventures like winter hiking in the White Mountains and bike trips and canoe trips. And then they also donate a significant portion of the money. So they've donated thousands of dollars already over the last few years to local nonprofits. And I think it's another way that I want to empower young women to see themselves as leaders and also to see themselves as philanthropists, because to hand over a check, I tell them all the time that money can't solve all our problems, but if someone's hungry, you can solve problems like hunger and housing, lack of housing with money. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to control resources so that they can give money to the food pantry to help alleviate hunger in our community, I think is a huge lesson for young people to see that they can make a difference and hopefully improve their life and improve the lives of those around them through service and donation. So that's the other bit of involvement for me in the community that I'm really proud of right now, and happy with I spend a lot of time with our girls down in the garden growing flowers and making bouquets, and everyone enjoys our time together.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
It's been an excellent podcast / interview.
Thank you. Thank you guys for what you're doing and for this project. I think this is a tremendous resource for the community to capture people's stories, right, and to hear what's inspired them. So thank you for doing this.